My name is Zoe Alcott. My parents handed my twin sister the keys to a glittering high-rise apartment for graduation and gave me the rusted remains of a half-burned house. I rebuilt it, every inch. And when they tried to take it back and give it to her again, I didn't cry. I loosened the faulty wiring myself and watched from across the street as Chelsea's smug smile turned to panic in the rising smoke. Tell me, where are you watching from? Type your city or country in the comments. And if you've ever been the forgotten one in your own family, stay with me, because what happened next changed everything. It was a Sunday afternoon, one of those painfully perfect suburban days where the roses are blooming, the grill's going, and everyone pretends things are just fine. We were all gathered in the backyard under the shade of the big sycamore tree. Mom was sipping her wine with one manicured hand while flipping burgers with the other. Dad, as always, stood nearby like a prop, sunglasses on, nodding at everything she said. I was already feeling small. There was a banner strung up across the deck, "Congrats Chelsea and Zoe," but only one name had glittery pink letters. Guess whose? Chelsea, my identical twin but somehow always more visible, was glowing in a white sundress, surrounded by helium balloons, friends, and a Bluetooth speaker softly pumping pop music. I stood closer to the patio door, still wearing my graduation gown because no one had told me what came next. I kept adjusting the hem, like maybe if I smoothed it enough, something would feel right. Then Mom clinked her glass for attention. "Everyone," she called out. "We have a little surprise for the graduates." Chelsea gasped and grabbed my arm like we were still 5 and shared secrets. "Oh my God, are they giving us cars?" "Better," Dad said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out 2 sets of keys. One shimmered on a silver ring, a plush leather fob dangling like a jewel. The other was a lump of rusted metal keys bound by an old twist tie. "This," Mom announced, holding up the shiny keys like a trophy, "is for our sweet Chelsea, a downtown loft near the art district, fully furnished with rooftop access and secure parking." Chelsea screamed, literally screamed. "No way, oh my God." She launched herself at them, hugging Mom so hard her wine spilled. I waited. Then Dad tossed the rusty set toward me. I caught it on instinct. "And that's for you, Zoe. It's an older property across town. Needs some elbow grease, but we figured you could make it work." Laughter from the guests. Not at me exactly, but at the absurdity of the comparison. I blinked at the keys in my hand. They were cold, dirty. One of them still had soot on it. "Make it work," I said, voice louder than I meant it. "What is this?" "An opportunity," Mom said, like she was doing me a favor. "You're always talking about how you like to build things. Well, now you get to." Chelsea was already spinning in circles, dangling her keys like earrings. "Do I get to see it today? Can I move in right away?" "Tomorrow," Dad said, beaming. "We'll do a walkthrough." I stepped forward. Why do I always get less? That silenced the yard, for a second. Then someone coughed, and Mom's friend Brenda clinked her glass and murmured something about siblings being different. I looked around, no one met my eye. Not even Dad. Chelsea had the decency to stop smiling for half a second. "Seriously," I said, turning directly to my parents now. "She gets a luxury apartment and I get, what, a condemned shack, and I'm supposed to smile and say thank you." "You're being ungrateful," Mom said sharply. "That house has potential." My jaw clenched so tight I thought I'd crack a molar. "I graduated with the same GPA. I worked a part-time job. I don't go out every weekend or drain your credit cards." "But she gets a rooftop view." "Zoe," Chelsea whispered, eyes darting nervously around the guests, but I wasn't whispering anymore. "You know what? Never mind." I dropped the keys on the patio table with a loud clink. "Congratulations, Chelsea. I hope the rooftop comes with a conscience." Then I walked out of my own graduation party, straight down the sidewalk in heels, while my family stood under fairy lights pretending I didn't exist. That night, the echo of clinking keys still rang in my ears. I was back in my childhood bedroom, the one with the half-peeled butterfly decals on the closet door and glow-in-the-dark stars that never really glowed. It was too small for my cap and gown, let alone my shame. I hadn't unpacked anything. Just collapsed onto the twin bed like I was 13 again and the world had stopped making sense. The walls looked smaller now. Dull beige paint cracking at the edges, the ceiling fan clicking like it might fall. I stared at it until my eyes burned. Then I grabbed my phone and typed, "What did I do to deserve this?" I sent it to Marissa. Less than a minute later, "Nothing, want me to come over?" I hesitated. Then, "Yeah, She showed up 20 minutes later with a grocery bag, a six-pack of Dr. Pepper, and a box of powdered donuts. "Emergency carbs," she said, sliding onto the bed beside me. "And if that doesn't fix it, we egg their car." I almost smiled. Almost. She looked around. "Wow. I haven't been in here since 10th grade. You still have the weird doll with one eye." "She's in the closet," I muttered. "She's seen enough." Marissa pulled the keys out of my hoodie pocket like she was handling an artifact. "These are disgusting," she said flatly, squinting at the grime. "Is this soot? Guess it matches the vibe. What kind of house even needs keys like this? It's not a house, it's a warning." I sat up. "They said it has potential." My mom said that like it was a blessing. "Zoe," Marissa said, serious now, "you know you don't have to accept this, right? You don't owe them gratitude for giving you literal trash." "But what if I don't go see it?" I whispered. "What if it's not trash? What if it's worse than I'm imagining?" "Then we'll laugh and leave," she said, already standing. "But first we see it. I don't want you haunted by the idea that maybe you were just being dramatic. You deserve to know what they handed you." I glanced at the clock. "Nearly 10 p.m., you sure?" She raised a powdered donut like a toast. "To late-night questionable decisions. The city looked different at night when you're driving toward the edge of everything. We passed strip malls with one flickering sign, boarded-up shops, and lots with weeds taller than the fences. My stomach turned as we got farther from anything familiar. Marissa had Google Maps pulled up. "Okay, this street doesn't even have a stoplight," she muttered. "Zoe, it's not good." The headlights bounced off a street sign half covered in ivy. "I think this is it." We pulled up in front of a sagging single-story house with warped siding and what used to be a porch. A tree root had cracked the sidewalk into jagged slabs. The whole place looked like it had been rejected by time. Marissa whistled. "Wow, okay, I was wrong. This is actually worse than I expected." The front door was slightly ajar. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded, even though I wasn't. Inside, it smelled like damp wood and something faintly charred. The air was thick, like it hadn't moved in years. Dust hung in beams of moonlight from a cracked window. Marissa clicked on her flashlight and aimed it at the far wall. Her voice went flat. Zoe." The drywall was scorched, blackened and blistered. An entire section had melted, revealing wood studs behind it, some still half-burned. "This house had a fire," she said, quiet now. "A bad one." I felt my knees buckle. I sat on the dirty floor without thinking. The keys dangled from my fingers, useless and heavy. "What kind of parents give their daughter this?" I asked, my voice cracked. "Is this what I'm worth to them?" Marissa crouched beside me. "No, this isn't about you, this is about them. Their guilt, their selfishness, whatever twisted scorecard they're using. But this house, this mess, it's not a reflection of you." I stared at the wreckage. "It feels like a grave." Marissa looked around. "Or maybe a blank canvas." We came back in daylight. Maybe it was foolish, maybe stubborn, but after barely sleeping a wink, I told Marissa I had to see it again. Not at night. Not with shadows dancing in every corner. I needed to face it in full color. No more guessing. No more hoping it wasn't as bad as it looked. It was worse. The sun only made it crueler. We parked across the street. The grass had grown waist-high, tangled with wild vines and broken fence posts like something out of a forgotten horror movie. A rusted swing set stood crooked in the backyard, chains swaying gently with the breeze like they remembered children who didn't live here anymore. The house sat low to the ground, no porch, just rotted steps leading to a faded door that had warped with moisture and time. Window panes were missing, their jagged outlines dusted with cobwebs. The whole frame looked like it had been clawed at by nature and abandoned mid-fight. Marissa didn't say anything as we walked up the cracked sidewalk. She just adjusted her sunglasses, popped her gum, and followed me like we were about to open a time capsule sealed in trauma. "Here goes nothing," I muttered and pushed the door open. It creaked like a threat. The smell hit me instantly, not just mold and mildew but something older, bitter, burnt, a memory gone sour. Marissa stepped in behind me. "Careful, floor might not be stable." The living room was barely recognizable as a room at all. The ceiling had partially collapsed, revealing thick beams blackened by fire. One side of the wall was fully charred, from baseboard to crown molding. A ceiling fan hung at an angle, one blade missing, wires exposed like the house had been mid-scream when everyone left. "Good God," Marissa whispered. I reached for the light switch out of instinct. "Don't," Marissa started. Click. A loud pop. A flash of orange light shot from the wall socket, followed by a crackling buzz that fizzled out with a shudder. We both jumped back. Okay, lesson learned, Marissa muttered. Do not touch the electricity, got it? My hand was still shaking, not from the sparks, from the realization that this wasn't just a fixer-upper, this wasn't even salvageable. This was an apology wrapped in decay, a punishment disguised as opportunity. I took a few steps further, crunching on debris and brittle wood. The kitchen was visible from here, cabinets half melted, counters covered in soot. A bird had built a nest above the sink where a cabinet door hung open like a yawning mouth. And somehow there was still a photo on the fridge. Faded, burnt around the edges, but there. It was of two girls, probably sisters, grinning, covered in cake. The bottom half had melted, but you could still see one of them was missing her two front teeth. I reached for it before I could think. My fingers brushed ash and stuck slightly to the magnet. Marissa was watching me from the doorway. I shouldn't have come, I said quietly. This isn't a house, it's a warning. To what? She asked, stepping over a pile of caved-in drywall. I looked around, the remnants of a family long gone. Broken furniture, forgotten photos, the heavy weight of memory not mine. To know your place. No, she said, shaking her head. This isn't their message, this is yours. I dropped to the dusty floor, legs folding under me. The tears came, uninvited but unstoppable. I didn't sob, I just leaked. My body too tired to protest anymore. Marissa crouched beside me, brushing dust from her jeans. Her voice was steady. Zoe, look at me. I did. You're not broken, this house is, and even broken things have bones, we could work with that. My voice was barely there. It's too far gone, she tilted her head. Maybe, but maybe it's not a grave. I stared at the wreckage. The choked vines, the scorched drywall, the photo still clinging to the fridge door like it had something left to say. A blank canvas, she whispered. Not a grave. I didn't respond, but I didn't argue either. 3 days later, the smell of smoke had started to fade, but the fire it lit inside me hadn't. I still couldn't explain what changed. Maybe it was Marissa refusing to flinch. Maybe it was the way the photo on the fridge refused to let go. Or maybe it was the silence from my family after I didn't return their calls or show up for Chelsea's post-grad dinner. Not even a "you okay?" I didn't need their words. Their silence was louder. And suddenly this place, this forgotten, blackened skeleton of a house, started to feel like something I could claim. Not because it was beautiful, but because no one else wanted it. Marissa was already treating it like a personal project. She showed up that morning in cut-off jeans, a rolled-up band tee, and combat boots, her hair in a bandana like she'd walked off a renovation show. She carried a sketchpad and 3 different iced coffees. You like navy? She asked as we stood in the middle of what used to be the kitchen. I blinked. Like the color? She snorted. No, the branch of the military. Then she pointed to the wall. I'm thinking navy cabinets with gold fixtures or matte black if you want drama. Marissa, you have to let me do this. I need a project that isn't someone's boring condo redo with live laugh love on the wall. I can't afford anything right now, I admitted. I'm not charging you, she said, eyes sparkling. This is mutual survival. She was already sketching before I could protest. We started small, just clearing out the living room, sifting through the layers of soot and debris like archaeologists. Marissa found a moldy bag of doll clothes that looked like they belonged in a horror movie. I found broken glass, an old VHS tape with no label, and a nest of wires that should have been condemned. And then I found her. Tucked beneath a pile of scorched insulation by the fireplace, I saw the faintest glint of white. I reached down carefully and pulled out a small ceramic figure, edges singed and warped by heat. A ceramic angel. One wing cracked, half her face melted. I recognized her instantly. She used to sit on my dresser, I whispered, brushing off the ash. I think I was 5 when Mom gave her to me. Marissa looked up from where she was scooping drywall into a trash bag. That's from your room. I nodded slowly. She said the house was just some property they bought for cheap years ago. But this was mine. Marissa stood, her expression shifting. Then this house has always been yours, they just didn't tell you. The memory hit me all at once. I was maybe 6, running through a half-furnished house with plastic wings strapped to my back. Mom was standing in the doorway, talking to someone on the phone, telling them we were just renting it out for now. I'd loved that big empty space. I'd called it the quiet house. And now it was mine again, or had never stopped being. I didn't cry this time. I just gripped the angel tighter and tucked her into my bag. Marissa cleared her throat. So, are we gutting the walls or what? By the end of the day, we had 3 contractor bags full of trash, a pile of wood we thought we might salvage, and a rough plan for repainting every surface. The old house groaned with every movement, but it felt like it was listening. I'd never used a crowbar before. Turns out it's deeply therapeutic. I tore up the corner of the living room carpet and found stained hardwood underneath. "This isn't bad," I said, panting, sweat dripping into my eyes. Marissa nodded. "Needs sanding, but yeah, it's solid." "Kind of like me," I muttered, then paused. Marissa raised her brow. "I meant that metaphorically, but huh." We worked until dusk, blasting music from Marissa's phone and high-fiving whenever we didn't fall through the floor. The house was still ruined, still charred and hollowed out, but for the first time I felt like it was breathing again. So was I. At one point, I looked at Marissa across the half-demolished living room, her cheeks streaked with grime, her sketchpad tucked under one arm. She caught my stare. "What?" I smiled, really smiled. "Nothing, just, thanks for not letting me walk away." "Zoe," she said, grinning back, "this isn't the kind of thing you walk away from. This is the kind of thing you rise from." 2 weeks in and my nails were permanently blackened, my shoulders ached, and my sleep schedule was a mess. But for the first time in forever, I didn't feel invisible. I was tired, but I was seen. Every morning I clocked in at the bookstore cafe off Jefferson Street, apron on by 8:00 a.m., steaming oat milk for regulars and recommending poetry collections no one asked for. Then I'd rush across town, grab fast food on the way, and meet Marissa at the house by 5. That house. My house, it still didn't feel real how fast things had changed. How fast I had changed. We'd gutted the kitchen completely, which it turned out was less HGTV montage and more dust in your lungs misery. But Marissa was in her element. She showed up every night with a new thrift store find or color swatch, eyes shining like a mad scientist. "Okay, hear me out," she said one evening, laying a strip of deep navy paint across the cabinet frames. "We lean dramatic, gold handles. Maybe even black tile backsplash. Are you trying to seduce the kitchen?" I asked, swiping a bead of sweat from my neck. "If it works, it works." She wasn't wrong. The navy looked rich and bold against the worn walls, like the house was slowly remembering it had dignity once. Some nights, we played old music from her Bluetooth speaker, Fleetwood Mac, Paramore, Earth, Wind and Fire. Other times, we worked in near silence, focused, wired on Red Bull and stubborn pride. There was no air conditioning, so we opened every window we could force loose. Every breeze carried in the scent of sawdust and old smoke, like ghosts finally exhaling. One particularly brutal Tuesday evening, I was scraping layers of wallpaper in what we decided was going to be my future bedroom when I heard a knock at the front door. Well, what was left of it. I peeked out through the screen, expecting another delivery from Marissa's Craigslist treasure hunts. Instead, I saw an older man in overalls holding a tape measure and a modest smile. "Hi there," he said. "Name's Carl, I live 2 houses down." He pointed vaguely through the thicket of weeds. "I've been watchin' you 2 work all week," he said, wiping his forehead with a rag. "Figured I'd introduce myself before y'all knocked the whole thing down," I laughed. "It's tempting," Carl chuckled. "You've got guts, most people would have run screaming." Marissa appeared behind me, paint-streaked and barefoot. We did scream. Then we stayed. Carl looked around the room behind us. "You're doing something good here, shame what happened to the last tenants. After the fire it just sat, been empty over 3 years now." "What caused it?" I asked. "Electrical, old fuse box. Kids were playing in the back, someone left something plugged in overnight. Real sad, but looks like you're giving it new life." He reached into his truck and pulled out a phone. "I remodel kitchens part-time. Nothing fancy, but I've got some old cabinets in my garage if you want 'em. They're clean, sturdy, and free." Marissa blinked. "Wait, you're offering us free cabinets?" He nodded. "It'd be a shame to see 'em rot. I'll even help load 'em." I don't know what it was about that moment, but my throat closed up. It wasn't just the kindness, it was how unexpected it felt. How unearned. Like maybe the world wasn't completely cold after all. Carl helped us carry the cabinets over the next day, even threw in a few mismatched drawer pulls for character. By Friday, we'd installed half of them. Marissa painted the others a brushed ivory to offset the navy base. They looked like they'd always belonged there. That night, sitting on the dusty floor in what used to be a burned-out kitchen, eating takeout noodles from plastic containers, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. "This doesn't look like a joke anymore," I said, staring at the blue cabinets glowing under a single dangling bulb. Marissa nudged my shoulder. It never was. No, but it looked like one, to them. When they gave me this place, they thought they were punishing me. She twirled a noodle. Guess you're not so easy to bury. We clinked chopsticks instead of glasses. In that quiet, chaotic space, half built, half healed, I realized I didn't need anyone's permission to build something beautiful. Not my parents'. Not Chelsea's. Not even my past selves. This house might still be legally theirs. But piece by piece, it was becoming mine. I moved in on a Thursday evening with 3 boxes, a handful of plants, and a record player that hadn't worked right since high school but still felt like home. The floors gleamed. Marissa and I had sanded them for 3 days straight, breathing in fine dust and coughing through our laughter. The kitchen smelled faintly of lemon oil and new paint. Living room still had exposed beams in one corner, but we decided to leave them on purpose, for texture, Marissa said. I had no couch, no art on the walls, no curtains, but I had light, real light. The windows were clean now. The air was clear. I walked barefoot from room to room, not to check for problems, but just to feel. The first night, I curled up on a hand-me-down armchair and played a warped Billie Holiday record while my monstera sat in the corner like it had always lived there. I lit a candle from the dollar store and whispered to no one, I did it. I didn't cry, not yet, I was saving that. 3 days later I sent the text, hey, I moved in. Want to come see the place? I hovered over the message for nearly an hour before I hit send. Chelsea replied first, Chelsea, wait, really? You actually fixed that place up? Then Mom, oh, well, that's wonderful, sweetheart. When? We settled on Sunday afternoon, just the 4 of us. No plus ones. No wine glasses clinking in the background. Just family. Just whatever we were now. Marissa offered to stay for moral support, but I told her no. I needed to do this alone. If I was ever going to step out of Chelsea's shadow, I had to stop hiding behind borrowed bravery. I spent the morning of the housewarming cleaning every surface twice, rearranging thrifted dishes on the kitchen shelves, lighting that same cheap candle, and praying the room didn't smell like anxiety. When the knock finally came, my stomach twisted like a rag being wrung out. Dad entered first, ducking under the new doorway arch I'd framed out myself. He looked around, nodding slowly, hands shoved in his pockets like he was afraid to touch anything. Then Chelsea walked in and froze mid-step. This is, she started, her voice caught somewhere between disbelief and wonder. This is actually kind of amazing. I swallowed hard. Mom followed, wearing one of her crisp blouses and that soft, tight-lipped expression she saved for polite compliments. I have to say, Zoe, she said, scanning the kitchen, this is far more put together than I expected. I had help, I said quietly. Marissa's got an eye for design. But you did all this? Dad asked, finally stepping forward. Yourself, I nodded. Mostly nights, after work, weekends. Chelsea wandered over to the navy cabinets and opened one slowly. You painted these? She asked. They look expensive. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms to hide how much my hands were shaking. Carl down the street gave us the base cabinets, I just repurposed them. She glanced at the gold fixtures at the salvaged wood floating shelves above the stove. Honestly, she said, turning toward me, this is nicer than my apartment. The words hit me like a bell, sharp, clear, impossible to ignore. Mom frowned slightly. Don't say that, honey, yours has amenities. Zoe's is still very modest. I like modest, Chelsea said, taking a seat at the little bistro table I'd set up by the window. This feels curated. I waited for the catch, the dig, the joke, but it didn't come. Dad nodded again, slower this time. Well, you've certainly made it livable. Not beautiful, not impressive. Livable. Still, it was something. A step. I poured lemonade into mismatched glasses and set out a plate of store-bought cookies I tried to pretend were homemade. We sat in my new living room on floor cushions and old chairs, and for a moment I allowed myself to believe maybe this was what healing could look like. I watched their eyes move over the handmade touches, my chipped mugs, the old record player humming softly, the sunlight warming the hardwood floor I had stained myself. They didn't say much, but they stayed. And in that silence I found a fragile kind of hope. Maybe they'd finally seen me. Or maybe they just saw the value in what I'd built. It happened the following Friday. I came home late from work, keys already in my hand, humming along to whatever song was stuck in my head until I noticed the music. Not my warped record player, something louder, bass-heavy. Che-u-je-i, the front door was unlocked. Inside, the lights were blazing. Laughter bounced off the walls I'd painted myself. The air smelled like citrus vodka and something greasy. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. People, strangers. My living room was full of them, heels kicked off near the door, jackets tossed over my chair, bodies leaning against my shelves like they belonged there. Someone had moved my plants to make space. Someone else was using my record player as a drink table. "Hey," a girl I didn't know shouted. "Great place." I walked in slowly, heart pounding. "What is going on?" Chelsea appeared from the kitchen, glowing, drink in hand, wearing a red dress I'd never seen. "Zoe, you're home early." "What is this?" My voice didn't sound like mine. She waved a hand around. "Just a little thing, my friends wanted to see the place." "The place?" I said. "You mean my house?" She laughed lightly. "Relax, you're so tense, it's basically empty anyway." I looked around. Lipstick stains on my glasses. Pizza boxes stacked on my counter. Someone had spilled red wine across the cream rug Marissa, and I found at a flea market at 6 in the morning. "That rug cost me 3 days of sanding floors," I said, my voice shaking now. "And you didn't even ask." Chelsea took a sip of her drink. "I didn't think you'd mind, I mean Mom and Dad own it." There it was, I felt something snap clean and sharp. "This is my home," I shouted. The music dipped, conversation stalled. "You don't get to treat it like your trash bin." Her smile didn't disappear, it sharpened. "Wow, dramatic, you should loosen up." "Everyone needs to leave," I said, louder now. Now, people exchanged looks. Someone muttered, "Awkward." One by one, they grabbed their things and filtered out, avoiding my eyes like they'd stepped into something private. Chelsea stayed. "You embarrassed me," she said coolly. "You disrespected me," I shot back. "You used my space like it was yours," she shrugged. "Maybe if you weren't so sensitive." I opened the front door, hard. "Get out." She stared at me, stunned, then scoffed and walked past me without another word. That night, I cleaned until my hands were raw. Threw away the rug, scrubbed lipstick from glass. When I finally collapsed into bed, I knew something with me had shifted. The next morning, I changed the locks. Exactly 1 week after I changed the locks, my mother showed up at my door with a Tupperware of lemon bars and a smile so carefully arranged, it made my teeth hurt. "Zoe, sweetheart," she said, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't tossed me a shack and called it character building. "Mind if I come in?" I hesitated. She was already stepping through the door. Her eyes swept over the space, at the gleaming floors, the navy cabinets, the golden fixtures Marissa had found at a warehouse sale. At the plants in the corner, the scratchy armchair, the thrifted art on the walls. She took it all in with a sort of stunned silence. "I have to admit," she said finally, setting the Tupperware down, "you really made it beautiful in here." I waited. Her tone changed just slightly, smoothing itself out like silk. "And that's part of why I'm here." I crossed my arms. "Chelsea send you," she gave me a gentle sigh. "You and your sister have always had different ways of seeing things. More like different rules," I muttered. "Well," she continued, ignoring the dig, "Chelsea's had a hard few weeks." I raised an eyebrow. "Did she spill wine on another person's property?" "She's been struggling, Zoe." Mom stepped closer, lowering her voice like we were in some heartfelt movie. "She had to sell her apartment. It was either that or let the bank seize it. She's racked up a lot of debt. Credit cards, rent she couldn't cover. It's been hard." I blinked. "And, well, she needs somewhere to stay," Mom said, clasping her hands together. "And your father and I were talking. We realized it makes the most sense for her to move in here." I stared at her, cold and still. "You're not serious." "We are," she said, voice soft and purposeful. "It's temporary, just until she's back on her feet." My stomach tightened. "You already gave this to me. You said it was my graduation gift." Her lips pursed. "We said it had potential. You made it livable. And we're proud of that, but the deed is still in our name." I felt my knees wobble slightly, but I didn't sit. I couldn't. "You're giving it to her now. After everything, she trashed this place." Mom took a folded envelope out of her purse and placed it on the table between us like it was a peace offering. "These are the property records. I just wanted to be transparent." I opened the envelope. There it was, the house, listed under my parents' names. No transfer, no legal gift, just a token set of keys and a casual make it work. I shook my head, lips trembling. "You can't do this." "We can," she said gently. "And we are. She'll be moving in by the end of the month." "But this is my home." My voice cracked on the word. "I rebuilt this. I fixed your mistake. You gave me a broken house and I made it whole." Mom's voice dropped. "Don't shout, Zoe, I'm trying to be civil." I felt something collapse inside me. Not a scream. Not a sob, just the quiet realization that I was never supposed to win. That even when I played their game and won with grit and sweat and drywall dust in my lungs, they'd still rewrite the rules. She had everything, I whispered, my hands tightening into fists. The apartment, the support, the parties, the benefit of the doubt, and now she gets this too. She's your sister, Mom said calmly, and family helps family. I stared at her like I was seeing her for the first time. No, I said, family uses family, and you're very good at that. Her jaw stiffened. We're giving you time to adjust, Zoe. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. She turned and walked toward the door. I didn't stop her. When she left, I picked up the property file, held it in my shaking hands, and read the last line again and again. Title holder, Eleanor and Mark Alcott. The house was never mine, but they let me believe it was until it was convenient to take it back. I looked around at the home I had built, the one place I had ever felt safe in, and for the first time in weeks I felt cold again. They were going to take it, unless I found a way to let it go on my terms. That night, I didn't go back to the house. I went to Marissa's apartment, the one with the bad parking and even worse lighting, but it felt like a safe house. A place where the truth could finally be ugly without needing to dress up. She opened the door and took one look at me, still holding the manila envelope with the property documents, and said, "Don't talk yet. Sit, I'll get the wine." 10 minutes later, we were both barefoot on her couch, the lights dim, Billie Eilish crooning from a speaker on the floor. I was still in the same jeans I wore to work, knees stained from scrubbing baseboards that apparently didn't belong to me. I told her everything. I spoke in a flat, exhausted voice, like I was reciting a bedtime story I'd outgrown. From the moment my mom showed up with lemon bars and legal facts, to the way she said Chelsea needs a place now like I was supposed to surrender mine on cue, Marissa didn't interrupt. Not once. She just passed me the wine bottle when I gestured, "Let me ramble, let me rot." When I finally stopped talking, she leaned back, eyes scanning the ceiling like the answer might be painted there. "Okay," she said at last. "So they're planning to hand the house back to the girl who literally destroyed it the second she touched it." "Correct. And they expect you to just move out." "Technically, yes, since, surprise, I'm not the owner." Marissa exhaled sharply, rubbing her temple. "They watched you rebuild that place from soot and splinters. They came and saw what you did with it." I nodded, staring into my wine. "And then they decided it looked good enough to steal." She was quiet for a long time. The kind of silence that meant something was forming, an idea, a shift, a storm just past the horizon. Then she looked at me. And she smiled, but not her usual smile. Not the crooked, teasing one that came with sarcasm or inside jokes. This was different. "If they want it," she said slowly, "we'll give it back." I blinked. "What?" She leaned in, voice lower now. "We'll give it back." I stared at her, heart thudding. She grinned wider like the idea had teeth. "Just not the way they expect." My mouth opened to protest, but nothing came out. Because suddenly I could see it too, a flicker of clarity. Of cold, steady fire, not panic, not desperation, something cleaner, something earned. Marissa leaned forward and tapped the wine bottle against mine like a toast. "They think they're getting your house," she said, "but all they're getting is walls." I laughed once, quiet and sharp. "And faulty wiring." "Exactly," she said. "You rebuilt it, you know every inch of that place, you know what works and what doesn't." The air shifted between us. The defeat that had been strangling me for days suddenly loosened. I could breathe again, not because I'd found peace, but because I'd found purpose. "I've got tools," I whispered. "I've got gloves," she said. I turned to her. "Are we really doing this?" She raised an eyebrow. "You sure you're ready?" I looked down at my hands, blistered, calloused, still stained with the work I had poured into that place. My sanctuary, my proof. "They want the house," I said. She nodded. "Then let's give them the shell," I murmured. "But my home leaves with me." We sat in silence, Billy humming in the background as the pieces clicked into place. We weren't just reacting anymore. We were planning. Because there's a difference between letting something go and choosing to burn it down first. The plan wasn't complicated. It didn't have to be. It just had to be exact. Marissa showed up Saturday morning in black leggings and a no-regrets sweatshirt, holding coffee in one hand and a folded blueprint in the other. She had mapped out what we were keeping, what we were salvaging, and what was going to stay behind, looking whole but gutted where it counted. "Think of it like open-heart surgery," she said, eyes gleaming. "Except the patient kind of deserves to flatline." By noon, we were pulling up floorboards. The antique rug, gone. Carl let us roll it up and store it in his garage along with the chairs, the end table, and the hand-painted vase Marissa had found at an estate sale. All the hardware, drawer pulls, doorknobs, faucets, even the gold light fixture in the hallway came off with a twist of the wrist in some quiet satisfaction. We worked methodically, room by room, removing everything that mattered, every piece that had our fingerprints. By sunset, the house was still standing, but hollowed out in all the ways that counted. That night, while the neighborhood lights flicked on one by one, Marissa pulled the circuit box open. I stood next to her, holding a flashlight. "You sure about this?" she asked. I nodded. "We don't need fire, just a little chaos, just enough to make sure it never feels like home to her." She grinned. "Perfect. Let me loosen the neutral wire here, and if she plugs in too much at once, the system'll short. And if she flips the breaker, she won't. She doesn't even know what a breaker is." I laughed softly. "You really think this will work?" "I know it will. You built this place. She doesn't even know how to hold a screwdriver." We checked everything one last time. The frayed power strip in the bedroom, the cracked outlet by the kitchen counter, the surge-prone microwave we'd left just for fun. Then we locked up and walked out, leaving the house staged perfectly. Too perfect. Like a trap wearing lipstick. She arrived the next day just after noon. I watched from Carl's porch across the street, tucked behind his screen door, heart pounding like I was the one stepping into a crime scene. Chelsea pulled up in a U-Haul with two friends and a half-hearted ponytail. Chewing gum and laughing like this was some spontaneous adventure. "She's wearing heels," Marissa whispered beside me. "To move in." "She's never lifted a box in her life," I said. They carried in crates and shopping bags, none of it looked practical. A lamp shaped like a swan. Velvet cushions, a bottle of champagne. She spun in the doorway like she was posing for a lifestyle blog. Then she plugged in the first lamp. Then the microwave. Then her blow dryer. And then, for some reason, the disco ball light. There was a beat of silence, a crackle, and the house groaned. You could actually hear it, that low, warning hum of energy pushed too far. A brittle wire snapping, the electrical system convulsing like it had finally had enough. Then boom. A burst of sparks from the hallway socket lit up the doorway, a shout, then smoke. Thick, fast, rolling down the hallway like breath held too long. Chelsea screamed. One of her friends bolted. The other dropped a box and stood frozen. From across the street, we could see the flash of orange climb the curtains, then the wall, then the ceiling. The fire alarm didn't even have time to go off before the windows fogged with smoke. The first flame curled like a tongue across the beam we had left textured. And just like that, the house I had built with my bare hands began to burn. Marissa squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I watched as Chelsea stumbled out, coughing, mascara streaking, her heels now soaked from the hose she tried and failed to use. "I will be." Sirens wailed in the distance. Neighbors gathered on sidewalks, whispering, pointing. Some watched with sympathy, a few with knowing eyes. Carl stood beside me, arms crossed, saying nothing. "She did this. That house was a gift," they said. But they never expected I'd know how to take it apart better than they ever built it. The fire truck screamed into the neighborhood 15 minutes too late. By the time the first hose hit the porch, the roof was already starting to cave. Flames licked the night air like it was hungry for everything we left behind. Smoke billowed up into the twilight, dark and heavy and final. I stood across the street, on the edge of Carl's lawn, arms folded, watching my past burn down. Chelsea was on the curb, wailing, mascara carved down her cheeks like a child's water painting left in the rain. Her dress clung to her in sweat and smoke. One heel was missing. She looked completely unhinged. She plugged in the blow dryer and the microwave and the speaker, one of her friends kept saying to the firefighters. And then the wall started popping. Chelsea sobbed, coughing. "It was the wiring, I swear it was the wiring. This place was already messed up. Zoe never fixed anything." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't have to, because the neighbors were watching. And they'd seen what that house looked like just 2 days ago. Carl stood beside me, hands in his pockets, quiet. Mrs. Lopez from 2 doors down held her phone at her chest like she didn't want to film, but wanted a record just in case. Even the Anderson kids, normally glued to their iPads, were huddled on the sidewalk, wide-eyed. My mother and father arrived just as the front windows burst, glass raining onto the lawn like falling stars. Mom gasped and stumbled back. "Oh my God. Oh my, what happened?" Chelsea launched herself at her. "The house is gone, it's gone, Mom." Dad turned slowly and spotted me standing across the street. His eyes narrowed. I stared back, calm, frozen. "She did this. Chelsea shrieked, pointing at me with a trembling hand. She sabotaged the wiring, she's always hated me. My mom glanced from Chelsea to me, panic bleeding into disbelief. Zoe, did you? I tilted my head slightly, as if considering the question. Then I answered slowly, coldly. She pushed too hard. That was it, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shout. I just told the truth and let it hang in the air like smoke, because it was true. Chelsea had always pushed, taken, assumed, believed the world owed her something prettier, shinier, more hers even if it wasn't. And now the thing she tried to steal was ash on the ground, swirling in orange reflection in the fire truck lights. And the house, gone, every board, every window. Every wall I had scrubbed, painted, carried in my hands, but I didn't feel hollow. I felt seen. Carl looked over at me. You good? I exhaled through my nose. Yeah, I'm good. A firefighter shouted something about the gas line. Chelsea wailed louder. My parents stood frozen in place, watching their second daughter unravel in the heat of what they tried to reclaim. And me? I just stood there, letting the warmth of the blaze brush my face, no longer afraid to burn. The official report came in 4 days later. Improper use of electrical outlets and failure to monitor faulty wiring, it read, stamped with bold black letters at the top. The insurance company called it preventable. That word did a lot of heavy lifting. Preventable meant no payout, no repairs, no sympathy. Chelsea had overloaded the system. That part was indisputable. Plugged in too many things at once, no surge protectors, no common sense. The house caught fire, and everything inside it, at least what we'd chosen to leave, went up in smoke. My parents tried to argue, of course. Claimed the house had a history of structural weakness. Tried to shift blame, it didn't stick. The fire marshal had seen too many of these before, so they lost the house. They lost the insurance claim. And just like that, the thing they tried to rip out from under me was gone for good. I never heard Chelsea say the words out loud, but someone told me she had to move back in with my parents. No apartment, no job, just shame tucked behind a thin layer of deflection. I didn't feel sorry for her, not anymore. I went back to the bookstore cafe like nothing had happened. The espresso machine still hissed the same way every morning. The regulars still ordered their vanilla oat lattes with exacting precision. No one there knew about the fire. No one asked. And I didn't offer. The furniture Marissa and I had saved, what little we stored in Carl's garage, became my new lifeline. I sold the rug first. Then the brass fixtures. Then the chairs we'd reupholstered during that endless weekend with sore hands and music blasting. I let go of them slowly, one piece at a time, on Facebook Marketplace, to people who didn't know they were buying my history. It was enough to cover first and last month's rent on a small studio apartment above a florist's shop downtown. The ceiling leaked when it rained, and the floor creaked under the weight of my mattress, but it was mine. All mine. And this time there were no trick keys or deeds hiding lies in the fine print. One night, as I stocked the cafe's front shelf with a new display of poetry books, the owner asked if I could stay late to help with inventory. I looked at her, kind woman, kind voice, but I smiled and said, not tonight. It felt powerful. I didn't offer a reason. I didn't apologize. I didn't shrink. I went home instead, opened my window, let the cool December air in, sat on the floor with leftover noodles and listened to the quiet like it was a song written just for me. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't owe anyone anything. Not effort, not silence, not forgiveness. 1 year later, I live above a florist named Helen who always leaves a single white rose by my door on Sundays. The apartment is still small. The ceilings still creak. The pipes groan when the radiator kicks in. But it's warm, it smells like eucalyptus and coffee grounds, and the morning light through the window makes my walls glow gold like the start of something soft and real. I kept a few things, just the ones that mattered. A dented tea kettle. A chipped ceramic angel, blackened on one side, placed carefully on the windowsill where the sun touches her every morning. She looks less broken now. Or maybe I just do. Marissa comes over every Tuesday, like clockwork, always holding iced coffee and at least one bag of discount candles she didn't need. We sit at my tiny kitchen table, knees bumping, while she scrolls through renovation videos and I answer comments on my blog. Yes, my blog. What started as a way to journal through the rebuild turned into something people actually read. I called it Second Nail, because that's what it felt like, driving in the second nail when the first one bent. I write about reclaimed furniture, upcycling disasters, and how to seal water damage with nothing but vinegar, prayer, and grit. People started messaging me, other girls mostly. Women who inherited broken kitchens, bad marriages, flooded basements, and bruised self-worth. And somehow, every time I wrote about scrubbing soot out of corners, they saw their own lives in it. Last month, I hosted my first in-person workshop in the local rec center. We tore up old laminate and sanded pallets for wall shelving. A teenager with a blue streak in her hair built a spice rack and cried when it didn't fall apart. "I've never made something with my own hands before," she whispered. I just smiled. I knew exactly what she meant. Marissa and I laugh a lot now, not because life is easy, but because it's ours. We laugh when the second-hand cabinet falls off the wall. We laugh when my blog crashes from too much traffic. We laugh when Helen downstairs tries to set me up with her son who's good with his hands and hates drama. And sometimes people still ask, "What happened to the house? Wasn't there a fire? Did you ever get justice?" I just sip my coffee, wrap both hands around the mug, and smile the kind of smile that doesn't ask for permission anymore. "Sometimes," I say softly, "the only way to rebuild is to burn down what never belonged to you in the first place."